On my birthday, my parents left me aside, but I got up and went after my happiness. I'll never forget the day I realized I wasn't a priority in my own home, and it wasn't discreet, silent, or gradual. It was direct, cruel, and completely unexpected. I was 18, my birthday was approaching, and I expected at least a gesture of recognition, something simple, a celebration done with love. But everything fell apart when I heard my mother on the phone, excited, talking about my sister Amelia's 15th birthday party. She spoke in lavish detail, an expensive party venue, magazine-worthy decorations, a professional photographer, a live band. And then I heard the words that froze my soul. They were going to use the money I'd set aside for my own party to pay for Amelia's. I froze, my stomach churned, anger and pain overwhelmed me. It wasn't just about money or gifts. It was about being ignored, about feeling like my worth never mattered. I cried in secret, feeling invisible, as if I had no place in my own family. Each word felt like a blade cutting through the little self-esteem I had left. In that moment, everything I knew about love and protection at home shattered, and I realized I had to act, that I could no longer wait for them to truly see me. A mixture of anger, sadness, and determination began to build within me, and I knew my life would never be the same again. My name is Eva, and I'm sharing this as a way to vent, but also as hope for those who can relate. I've always been responsible, studious, trying to do everything right, seeking approval, but even so, I always felt the difference in treatment between Amelia and me. She was always more pampered, more celebrated, more accepted. For years, I tried to rationalize it, thinking it was my imagination, that parents love differently. But in that moment, it became clear that favoritism wasn't a matter of manner, but of choice. My sadness mixed with anger, and I spent days in silence, hiding my tears, avoiding my own, home whenever I could. I was afraid to speak out, afraid of being called dramatic or ungrateful. But every night I lay awake reminded me of the same question. Why didn't I deserve something as simple as being prioritized on my own birthday? These sleepless nights made me realize that something inside me needed to change, that I could no longer live passively, waiting for love that would never come. Something inside me began to ignite, the desire to be the owner of my own story, to recover what had always been denied me. During those days, I felt confused, insecure, and hurt. I looked at my sister, my mother, my father, and felt as if I were living in a movie where I wasn't the protagonist, but an extra. Anger rose in waves, mixed with profound sadness, and I often locked myself in my room, trying to hold back the tears, breathing deeply to keep quiet. Every detail of Amelia's party that I saw or heard was a reminder that my place in the family wasn't important. But amidst the pain and anger, a small, almost imperceptible, but firm idea emerged. I couldn't allow them to define my worth, to choose my happiness for me. One day, with my heart racing, I asked my father what was happening, and he responded with a disregard that froze me. "You're mature, you'll understand. Amelia is still young, let her have this moment." At that moment, I felt physically sick, my throat dry, and a mixture of anger and sadness overwhelmed me. How could maturity mean accepting being ignored? Accepting that all the effort, dedication, and care I'd always offered were invisible? I went up to my room, closed the door, and cried uncontrollably. But in the midst of that crying, a light began to dawn. I needed to fight for myself, my celebration, my dignity. That was the moment I made the decision to act, to not let them determine my self-esteem or my happiness. The next morning, with trembling hands and a racing heart, I wrote a long message to my grandparents, telling them everything. The situation, the cruel words, their decision to use my money for someone else. I sent it without knowing what to expect. The response came quickly, with affection, understanding, and unconditional support. "Come here, we'll take care of you and what you deserve." I cried again, but this time it was different. It was a cry of relief, of hope, and of emerging strength. For the first time, I felt someone saw my pain, and that I had true allies. From that moment on, something inside me changed. I knew I could rebuild my life, even with the rejection and the absence of those who should love me unconditionally. The next day, I went to my grandparents' house with my heart racing, a mixture of fear and hope. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but I needed someone to listen to me, to truly see me. As soon as I arrived, my grandmother hugged me tightly, as if to protect me from everything, and my grandfather looked at me seriously, calmly, but firmly. They listened to me talk about everything, from the conversation with my parents to the feeling of abandonment that consumed me. Every word that came out of my mouth was accompanied by tears and sobs I had held back for so long. My grandfather, in a low voice, said, "Eva, you're not wrong for feeling pain. You deserve to be seen, heard, and loved, no matter what happens at home." That was liberating. For the first time, someone acknowledged that my pain was legitimate, that my feelings were valid. I cried like I had never cried before, feeling every weight lift from me. And it was at that moment that I realized there was still hope. With their encouragement, I began planning my own birthday party. It wouldn't be lavish. It wouldn't have a famous band or magazine-worthy decor, but it would be mine, and that was enough. My aunts and uncles and cousins rallied, each offering their help. Marcelo found affordable vendors, Ursula took care of the food, Raphael helped with the decor, and cousins Anna, Julia, and Felipe made sure everything was fun. Their every gesture showed me that true family is made of choice, presence, and care, not obligation or blood. With each decision I made about the party, I felt like I was reclaiming something that had been denied me for years: my autonomy, my voice, my right to exist. Amidst the laughter, the plans, and the small mishaps during the preparations, I began to realize that I was capable of creating my own safe space, of feeling genuine happiness without needing my parents' approval. The determination born from that moment was so intense that I knew, deep down, that this would be just the beginning of many important changes in my life. During the preparations, however, doubt haunted me. Alone in my room, I wondered if I was being selfish, if I shouldn't simply accept what had always been imposed on me, if I wasn't overreacting. But with each message of support from my grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins, the guilt lessened. I began to understand that asking for respect, care, and love isn't selfish. I realized I didn't need the approval of those who had treated me unfairly to fully exist. Each step I took in organizing the party also became a step of self-discovery. I was learning to trust myself, to value my feelings, and to act according to my needs. The fear still lingered, but courage began to overcome. And for the first time, I felt I was building something truly my own, without relying on the validation of anyone who had always ignored me. The day of the party arrived, and the mix of anxiety and euphoria was immense. I entered the hall and saw all those people smiling, not because it was an obligation, but because they genuinely wanted to be there for me. My heart burst with joy. It didn't matter that there weren't extravagant decorations or expensive gifts. What mattered was the genuine affection that surrounded me. Every hug, every smile, every word of support was proof that I was valued, that I mattered to someone. For the first time, I felt I didn't need to beg to be loved, that there was a safe space I myself had helped to build. The physical sensation was indescribable. My chest filled with emotion, my eyes filled with tears, my heart light. I finally understood that true happiness doesn't depend on wealth, approval, or status, but on feeling seen, heard, and genuinely loved. My parents didn't show up. Not a call, not a message, nothing. Their absence hurt, of course, but at the same time, it brought me freedom. For the first time, I realized that my happiness didn't need to depend on those who always made me feel inferior. I learned to value what truly mattered: people who chose me, who supported me, and loved me for who I was, not for what I could offer. From that moment on, I began to rebuild my self-esteem, my confidence, and my sense of self-worth. Every moment of the party was a silent affirmation. I deserve to exist fully. I can surround myself with true love, and I don't need to wait for approval from those who never wanted to pay attention to me. It was at that moment that I realized my life could be different, and that I had enough strength to follow my own path, even if I still carried wounds from the past. After my party, the tension at home increased. My parents discovered that the whole family had rallied around me, and this angered them. They began to blame me, saying that I had exposed the family, that I was being ungrateful, that I had manipulated the situation. I confess I felt scared, my hands trembled, my stomach churned, but for the first time, a strange sense of power surged within me. I managed to stand my ground, explaining that I wasn't wrong, that I only wanted to live my right to exist and be happy. My heart was racing, the anxiety was still there, but courage overcame my fear. For the first time, I realized I had a voice, and that it could be heard, even in the face of those who had always made me feel small. Each sentence I said seemed to free a part of me that had been trapped for years. It was a moment of transformation. I felt like I was finally regaining control of my life. The anger I had been holding in was transformed into strength, and that strength was something no one could take away from me, not even my parents. For the first time, I felt like I could fight for what was mine, without having to beg or apologize for existing. With the continued support of my grandparents, I decided to move away from home temporarily. I stayed a few days at their house, a safe space, full of care and attention, where my needs were a priority. I packed my things and, for the first time, felt like I had control over my life. The separation wasn't easy. I missed some routines, the small moments that were part of my daily life, but the feeling of being in an environment where I was valued outweighed any discomfort. My body felt lighter, my breathing calmer, and I felt a peace I had never experienced before. It was a welcoming silence that allowed me to think, reflect, and feel without fear of judgment. There, I discovered the value of being in a place where we are recognized, where we can express ourselves without fear. Every minute I spent at my grandparents' house was also a learning experience about self-worth and self-esteem. For the first time, I realized that distance from those who hurt us can be a necessary step toward rebuilding ourselves emotionally. During this time, I began therapy, something I had never considered before. At first, talking about everything was extremely difficult. Reliving every moment of rejection, favoritism, and abandonment made me cry, feel pain, and feel vulnerable. But gradually I realized that allowing these emotions to be expressed was liberating. I learned that weakness lies not in feeling, but in not allowing these wounds to heal. Each session was an opportunity to uncover layers of fear, anger, and sadness, but also strengths I never imagined I had. I began to rebuild my self-esteem, my confidence, and my ability to love myself, regardless of my parents' approval. Slowly, the negative thoughts I had about myself began to give way to the realization that I was enough and deserving of love and respect. Therapy became a safe space for me to reconnect with myself and understand that my worth doesn't depend on anyone else. One of the most impactful moments was discovering, through an uncle, that I wasn't my father's biological daughter. This revelation brought pain, but also clarity. Suddenly, everything that had previously seemed unfair began to make sense. The extreme favoritism toward Amelia, the emotional distance, the feeling of never being enough. Knowing the truth freed me, because I finally understood that it wasn't about me being less, but about their fears, guilt, and choices. I no longer carried responsibility for something that didn't belong to me. For the first time, I felt like I could own my own story, without depending on approval or affection that never existed. The feeling of relief mixed with pain was strange, but essential to my reconstruction. Understanding that I wasn't responsible for their decisions gave me emotional freedom, something I didn't even know I needed before. Accepting this truth was a painful process, full of ups and downs. I had days when anger seemed to consume me, days when sadness paralyzed me, but I also had moments of clarity. I saw that the support network I built, my grandparents, uncles, cousins, and friends, was more important than any bond that caused me pain. They showed me that love isn't measured by blood ties, but by presence, care, and choice. I began to see myself differently, understanding that I deserved respect, affection, and attention, and that I no longer needed to depend on those who couldn't offer them. It was a profound and liberating learning experience that began to change the way I interacted with the world. For the first time, I realized that my happiness could be built, even with scars and painful memories, and that it was possible to create true bonds that strengthened me. Over time, I began to notice profound changes in myself. The teenager who was always afraid of displeasing others, of putting herself last, began to learn to say no, to set boundaries, to stand up for her space and her needs without guilt. I was rediscovering who I was outside the context of rejection and favoritism. I began to plan my life independently, choosing courses, organizing my own finances, small daily achievements that gave me confidence. Each step showed me that I was capable of building a dignified life, even without my parents' support. The physical sensation of freedom mingled with a restrained but powerful joy that grew within me. I felt the strength of living for myself, of making decisions without needing validation from those who didn't want to support me. Each morning began with a feeling of hope, and each night, even tired, ended with pride in what I was building alone. Eventually, my parents tried to reconnect, but not sincerely. They came with ready-made excuses, empty phrases, attempts to make me feel guilty. I listened, but I didn't let myself be shaken. Love without action is just words, and I learned that I didn't need empty words to exist or be happy. For the first time, I was able to stand my ground without fear. I wouldn't go back to a place that had always made me feel inferior, disposable, invisible. With each conscious refusal, I felt a mixture of sadness and empowerment. Sadness for still wanting something that never existed. Empowerment for finally realizing that my happiness didn't depend on them. I physically felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a relief that left me lighter, breathing freely. And at the same time, I felt my heart grow stronger, each beat reminding me that I could sustain myself, that I could choose my own life, my own paths, and the people who were good for me. I learned that resilience and courage are built slowly, but they grow stronger when we decide to put our well-being first. Today, 2 years later, I look back and see the girl who cried alone, feeling invisible, and I realize the woman born from that pain. I still feel longing and open wounds, but also immense pride. Proud to have found strength in adversity, to have rebuilt my self-esteem, my worldview, and my ability to love and trust again. Every tear I shed, every night I felt fear or abandonment, was also a lesson in resilience. I learned that suffering is part of the process, but it doesn't define the end of the story. I didn't let the pain paralyze me. I used it as fuel to rise and forge my own path, based on the love I chose to receive and the courage I discovered within. Feeling it still hurts, but now I know it's possible to live with pain without letting it define me. Every victory, no matter how small, is proof that we are capable of rebuilding our lives even when all seems lost. I write all this because I know many people go through similar situations and feel wrong for feeling anger, sadness, abandonment, or revolt. It's not. Every emotion you feel is legitimate and deserves space, attention, and care. I spent years believing I should swallow my pain, make myself small, wait for my parents to realize my worth. Today I know this is a trap, a prison that families themselves can create without realizing it. Acknowledging pain, embracing feelings, and seeking support from those who truly care isn't weakness, it's courage. I was afraid of appearing selfish, of appearing dramatic, but I realized there's no drama in wanting respect, in wanting to be seen, in wanting to be loved. There's only a basic human right, to be treated with dignity. And it was this realization that gave me the strength to keep going, to get up and walk, even carrying wounds that no one helped me heal. Every tear I shed during that period was also a silent building of strength, a reminder that I deserve to exist fully, without needing to negotiate my worth. Today, I can write my own story, and the best part is that I'm not alone. I have my extended family, my friends, people who see the real me and love me for who I am, not for who I should be. If you're reading this and feel like you're never a priority, that you're always left out or compared, I want to tell you something very important. You are not alone. There is life outside of pain. There is love outside of obligation. There is acceptance, outside of the obligation to belong. It may seem impossible to believe, but life reserves people who will love you for who you are, without demanding anything beyond your genuine existence. I spent years trying to seek my parents' approval, trying to be enough for them, but I learned that it's not about being enough, it's about being respected. Don't wait for someone who chose not to see you to suddenly decide to love you. Instead, seek out those who already choose to be by your side, those who extend a hand without judgment, those who offer presence and care. The love that comes from choice is the purest and truest, and I discovered this after so much pain. It was in the support network I built, in the family I chose, that I found the peace that seemed unattainable. I still don't know exactly what the future will hold with my parents. Maybe one day we'll be able to talk, maybe not. But I've learned to live without depending on something that never truly existed. My happiness isn't tied to their approval, but to my ability to put myself first, to respect myself, to surround myself with those who truly care about me. Today, I look in the mirror and see a whole person, even with scars, even with painful memories. With each decision I make, with each daily achievement, I realize that I no longer need the recognition of those who didn't value me to fully exist. I'm able to create my own safe space, my own path, my own life, And this gives me a sense of freedom I didn't even know existed before. My heart still aches sometimes, but I've learned to live with it without letting it define me, without letting it control my destiny. The greatest lesson I've learned is that we shouldn't beg to be loved. True love doesn't make anyone feel invisible, disposable, or inferior. If you don't receive it from those who should give it to you, go find it wherever you can. You deserve to be seen, heard, welcomed, and loved. It doesn't matter what they said, what they did, or what they tried to hide from you. There's a whole world of people who can offer you genuine love, who will celebrate your victories, wipe your tears, and support you in moments of weakness. I learned to value these chosen bonds, to give attention and energy to those who truly see me, and to let go of any expectations of those who don't want to see my worth. This learning was liberating and allowed me to live more fully, even while carrying painful memories. I learned to trust in choosing the right people, not in the obligation of those who never truly wanted to support me. Finally, the message I want to leave is simple, yet powerful. Choose yourself. Rise up, even when it seems impossible, even when everything inside you wants to give up. Surround yourself with those who love you, those who support you unconditionally. Believe that your life doesn't end in pain, that your worth doesn't depend on the approval of those who don't respect you, that it's possible to rewrite your story, even with open wounds. I am living proof that it's possible to rebuild yourself, that it's possible to transform abandonment into strength, rejection into learning, pain into courage. Life doesn't end with rejection. It begins the moment you decide to own yourself, your choices, and your own path. If I could do it, so can you. The first step is believing you deserve it, and then taking action to surround yourself with true love, courage, and respect.